Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're heading to India to take a look at temple economics, specifically the Yadagirigutta temple in Telangana. Well, you might be surprised how interesting this is going to be, kind of like stumbling on a hidden treasure chest.
Yeah, it really is quite a story how this temple, also known as Yadadri, is growing so fast. And the financial side of it is particularly interesting, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. I mean, Yadagirigutta's annual income has shot up to a huge euro 224 crore. That's over 30 million US dollars. So how did that happen?
That's what we're going to find out. But first, maybe you could give us a little background on the temple itself.
Yeah, good point. For those who might not be familiar with Yadagirigutta, can you tell us a bit about its history and why it's so significant?
Sure. The Yadagirigutta temple is an ancient temple dedicated to Lord Vishnu, specifically his Narasimha avatar, the half lion, half man form. It's a really important place for Hindus, especially in the Telangana region. And recently, they've done a lot of reconstruction work, which has really made it even more popular.
So it's got that historical and religious draw. But what about these recent changes? What's driving this financial boom?
Well, the Telangana government has been looking at successful models of temple administration, and they've taken inspiration from the TTD, the Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam.
Ah, Tirupati. It's known for being super efficient and transparent, drawing in millions of pilgrims every year.
Exactly. And it seems Telangana wants to achieve something similar with Yadagirigutta. They've set up the Yadagirigutta Devasthanam, or YTD, kind of like mirroring the TTD model.
So they're aiming high. Tell me more about this YTD. Who's on it?
Well, it's a board with 18 members representing different parts of society. You've got scheduled castes, backward classes, women, and even an MLA or MLC.
It sounds like they're trying to be very inclusive, very representative. But what does this board actually do?
It's responsible for everything: the administration, the development, the maintenance of the temple, and the surrounding areas.
So it's more than just managing finances.
Oh, much more. They're overseeing daily rituals and services, planning big infrastructure projects, making sure devotees are taken care of. It's a big job.
I can imagine. And speaking of big, you mentioned a Temple City project earlier. What is that exactly?
It's a massive project. The government's proposal covers over 1,200 acres. Think 3 municipalities and 6 villages all under this project. They want to turn Yadagirigutta into this major religious and economic hub.
Wow, that is ambitious.
Yeah.
So if they're trying to replicate Tirupati's success, thinking big makes sense, I guess. But what does a temple city actually involve? What sort of restrictions or plans are in place?
They're aiming to create a very, controlled environment, very much centered on the religious experience. Certain things won't be allowed within the city limits, like begging, gambling, and any unlicensed
I
businesses.
see. So it's about maintaining a specific kind of atmosphere. And it seems to be working, at least financially. What's behind this huge 224 crore annual income? Is it just that the temple is more popular now?
Popularity is definitely a factor. The renovations and the government's focus on development are drawing in more pilgrims. And there are initiatives like the Mahalakshmi free bus travel scheme, which has brought in a lot more women devotees.
So it's a combination of factors, strategic planning, government initiatives, and the temple's own appeal. But is this model just for Yadagirigutta?
Not necessarily. The bill allows for setting up similar boards for other high revenue temples in Telangana. It could be a whole new way of approaching temple management across the state, maybe even for other states in India. Who knows?
So it's like a pilot program. If it works for Yadagirigutta, they can try it elsewhere. That's really interesting.
It really is. It raises all these questions about how religious institutions and governments work together to manage these sites. I mean, they're not just places of worship, they're important cultural and economic centers, too.
So many layers to consider. What do you think are some of the potential benefits and challenges of this approach?
Well, the benefits are pretty clear: increased revenue, better infrastructure, more jobs. But there are also some potential issues.
Like what? What could go wrong?
For instance, how much control will the government end up having over the temple's affairs? Can they find a balance between religious freedom and government oversight? That's a big one.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of preserving the temple's sanctity and its cultural heritage in the midst of all this modernization.
Exactly. And we also need to think about the impact on local communities. Ideally, the economic benefits should reach everyone. But there's always a risk of displacement, exploitation, even cultural clashes. It's important to involve the local communities from the beginning and make sure they benefit too.
You're right. It's not just about building a fancy temple complex. It's about building a sustainable ecosystem, one that benefits everyone. And speaking of complexity, we haven't even touched on the political side of things.
Oh, the political dimension is huge. The demand to rename the board, the calls for landowner compensation, the proposal for a metro rail line from Hyderabad to Yadagirigutta, it all adds up to a pretty complicated picture.
It sounds like there are a lot of competing interests and perspectives here. And then there's the whole healthcare issue, right? Taking care of the growing number of devotees.
Right. There's this push for a government medical college in Yadagirigutta to handle emergencies. With more and more pilgrims coming in, having proper healthcare facilities is essential.
It's about creating a system that can support everyone, keep them safe, and ensure a positive experience. It's a lot to manage. We've only just started to uncover this story. From temple administration and finances to politics and healthcare, there's so much to explore.
We've only just scratched the surface. The question of whether Yadagirigutta can truly become the next Tirupati is still open.
And that's what we'll be looking at in the next part of our deep dive. What does it really mean to be the next Tirupati, and can Yadagirigutta pull it off? Welcome back, everyone. We're in the middle of unraveling this fascinating story of the Yadagirigutta temple and its aspirations to become a major destination for religious tourism. And as we've seen, it's not just about finances and administration.
It's a lot more than that, yeah. Culture, politics, healthcare, it all plays a part.
Absolutely. And all these factors make this deep dive so interesting. We're really seeing how this religious site is evolving into something much bigger, with implications way beyond just the temple itself.
I agree. It's a fascinating process to observe.
But let's go back to that idea of Yadagirigutta becoming the next Tirupati. What does that actually mean? Is it just about copying Tirupati's financial success?
Well, the financial aspect is important, of course, especially given the impressive revenue we were talking about earlier. But becoming the next Tirupati involves so much more than just money. It's about creating a holistic experience for the devotees.
Can you say more about that? What exactly makes up this holistic experience?
Okay, imagine yourself as a pilgrim arriving at Yadagirigutta. The journey's smooth. Maybe you took that new metro rail line they're proposing. You arrive and find a clean, well-planned environment. No hassles, no beggars, just like they're envisioning with the Temple City project. The temple facilities are excellent, offering both convenience and comfort. But most importantly, you feel a sense of spiritual fulfillment, a real connection with the divine. That's what a holistic experience means.
That does sound pretty compelling. So it's not just about the buildings and the infrastructure, but the whole atmosphere, the ease of access, and the spiritual impact on the visitor.
Precisely. When all those elements come together, it creates a really powerful draw for pilgrims. And Tirupati is a perfect example of what can happen when you focus on creating a seamless and fulfilling experience for devotees.
But Tirupati's had centuries to build up its reputation and infrastructure. Can Yadagirigutta, with its recent surge in popularity, really achieve that same level of success?
That's the big question, isn't it? And to do it, they'll need to take a multifaceted approach. For one thing, the YTD needs to make sure they maintain and enhance the spiritual appeal of the temple. That means ensuring the rituals are carried out properly, the services are high quality, and the overall devotional atmosphere is strong.
So preserving that core essence of the temple, the religious significance that draws people in. What else is important for reaching this goal?
Well, they need to be really effective managers. We talked about the YTD board being modeled after the TTD, right? They need to live up to that model, be transparent and accountable, and run things efficiently. Every rupee they earn should be used wisely for the temple's development and the well-being of the devotees.
It's about good stewardship of resources, making sure the money's used for the right purposes, not just about generating profit.
Exactly. And then there's the whole infrastructure development side of things. The Temple City project, if they do it right, could really transform the whole area. We're talking about well-planned accommodation, efficient transportation, modern amenities, all the things you need to handle a huge influx of visitors.
Yeah, that metro rail line we talked about could make a huge difference in terms of accessibility. And what about the concerns regarding healthcare facilities?
That's definitely something they need to address. The demand for a government medical college is completely understandable. As more pilgrims come, they need to be prepared for emergencies. It's not just a matter of convenience, it's a matter of safety.
It's about building a whole ecosystem that supports everyone, makes sure they're comfortable and safe, and gives them a positive experience. But all this development, It has a big economic impact too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The economic potential here is huge. More tourism means more business for everyone. Hotels, restaurants, shops, transportation services, the construction and development projects will create jobs. There's a ripple effect that could benefit the whole region.
So it's not just about the temple's revenue. It's about lifting up the entire area economically. But, like we discussed before, this growth needs to be managed carefully to avoid those negative consequences, like displacement and exploitation.
You're absolutely right. They have to make a real effort to make sure the local communities aren't left behind. They need to have opportunities for skill development, jobs, even starting their own businesses. Everyone needs to benefit.
It has to be inclusive growth, where the benefits are shared fairly. And of course, we can't forget that political dimension we talked about before. How does that factor into this whole idea of becoming the next Tirupati?
Politics is always part of the equation with big development projects, especially when religion is involved. We've already seen the debates around the board's composition, the demands for compensation, the Metri line proposal. It all points to the different groups involved, all trying to have their say and potentially clashing with each other.
It's a delicate balancing act, isn't it? How can the YTD and the government manage all these political complexities and still stay true to their vision?
They need to be transparent and communicate effectively. They need to engage with all the stakeholders, listen to their concerns, and try to build consensus. The key is to find solutions that work for everyone, a win-win situation.
So it's not just about having a good plan, it's about putting that plan into action effectively, getting everyone on board and avoiding conflict as much as possible.
Exactly. It takes good leadership, political savvy, and a real commitment to doing what's best for everyone involved. The journey to becoming the next Tirupati isn't going to be straightforward. It's going to be complicated, with lots of twists and turns, and full of both challenges and opportunities.
How do you think this will all affect the identity of Yadagirigutta in the long run? Will it keep its unique character, or will it just become a copy of Tirupati?
That's a really interesting question. Ideally, Yadagirigutta should aim to become a model in its own right. They can learn from what Tirupati has done well, but they also need to forge their own path. They need to preserve their own unique history, traditions, and culture, even while they modernize and develop.
So it's about evolution, not imitation. It's about finding that balance between the old and the new. That sounds like a pretty tall order.
It is. It depends on a lot of things. How competent the YTD is, how committed the government is to sustainable development, how involved the local communities are, and even what the devotees themselves want.
It's bigger than just building a successful temple complex, isn't it? It's like they're creating a microcosm of modern India, a place where tradition and modernity come together, where spirituality meets development. But what does it all mean for the average person who visits Yadagirigutta?
For the average devotee, it's about experiencing their faith in a more fulfilling and enriching way. Imagine arriving at a temple that's not just a place of worship, but a vibrant cultural center. It's a place of peace and tranquility, but it also meets their modern needs and expectations.
So it's about improving the whole spiritual journey, making it more accessible, comfortable, and meaningful.
Exactly. That's the real measure of success. It's not just about the numbers, the revenue, the infrastructure. It's about the impact on people's lives, the sense of connection they feel, the memories they take with them.
It's about touching lives and having a lasting impact, not just building a monument to success. That's a really beautiful way to put it.
The human element is what truly matters. As Yadagirigutta goes through this transformation, it's so important to remember that the ultimate goal is to serve the people, nourish their faith, and create a space where spirituality can flourish.
This has been such an insightful conversation. We've looked at so many aspects of this ambitious undertaking: the economic potential, the political complexities, the cultural significance. But we've also talked about something much deeper: the essence of faith, the importance of the human experience, and the power of creating spaces that nurture the soul. Now, I want to ask you, our listeners, a question. If you were to visit Yadagirigutta, what would you hope to experience? What would make this pilgrimage truly meaningful for you? We'll be back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been talking all about the Yadagirigutta temple and its journey, exploring everything from finances and politics to the very essence of faith.
It's been quite a journey, yeah. We've really gotten into not just the what and how, but the why behind this whole transformation.
And as we wrap up our deep dive, let's try to tie it all together. We keep coming back to this idea of Yadagirigutta becoming the next Tirupati. But what does that actually mean in terms of success?
It's a really good question. Is it just about matching Tirupati's financial success, the same level of revenue and visitors, or is it something more?
I think, like you said before, it's got to be about creating a truly meaningful experience, not just something flashy or impressive.
I think you're right. Success in this case is about blending tradition and modernity. It's about making a space that's both spiritually enriching and well run, practically speaking. Imagine Yadagirigutta taking care of millions of devotees without losing that ancient heritage, a place where faith can grow and the whole community benefits.
Finding that balance is so important, isn't it? Keeping the temple sacred while making the most of the opportunities for growth and development.
Exactly. And it takes a long-term vision, not just focusing on what's right in front of you. It's about making smart choices that will benefit everyone for generations to come, both spiritually and materially.
It's almost like weaving a tapestry, bringing all these different elements together. Faith, economics, culture, community.
That's what makes this whole story so captivating. It's not just about this one temple, it's about how we think about and manage religious institutions in this day and age. The things we're talking about here, they apply far beyond Yadagirigutta.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about these deep dives. We start exploring and we find all these unexpected connections and complexities.
Absolutely. And hopefully this one has given you, our listeners, a much better understanding of the Yadagirigutta temple and the bigger picture surrounding it. Remember, the story's still unfolding, and the decisions they make now will have a big impact down the road.
That leads us to our final thought. We've talked about all these stakeholders, the temple administration, the government, the people living nearby. But at the heart of it all is the individual devotee, the person who makes that pilgrimage, seeking solace, a connection, something more.
That's right. It's their experience, their faith, their personal journey that matters most. And as Yadagirigutta works towards becoming the next Tirupati, they can't forget about that human element.
So, as we wrap things up, we want to leave you with this. What makes a pilgrimage truly meaningful? What are those things you can't quite put your finger on that can turn a visit to a temple into a life-changing experience? Think about that. Maybe even share your thoughts with us.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll find yourself at the Yadagirigutta temple, ready to start your own spiritual journey. When you do, hopefully this conversation will have given you a new perspective on this incredible and evolving story.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep searching for those little nuggets of knowledge that make our world so fascinating and complex.